So today we're going to look at one of my old articles that's about red flags in a natal chart and go through them, see if there's any validity to them. Obviously, a red flag is if, in a natal chart would be someone having such and such placement. You'd be like, okay, well, they have this, you should probably stay away. Now, obviously, this is not how astrology works. This is more for fun than anything else. Someone could have a ton of the placements I'm going to talk about and be amazing, and someone could have none of them and be horrible. So really it is about nature versus nurture, how you exercise your free will and how you manifest each one of these placements. So let's get into it. And to start off, I'm sure everyone, let me put this here. I'm sure everyone knows what a red flag is, right? A red flag, tarjeta roja, is basically when you, something that you would stay away from romantically, right? Oh, this person has this placement, that's a red flag. Or this person does this, red flag. Everyone knows. Okay, so first one about Venus square Uranus. Okay, so the main reason that Venus, and you could add Venus in Aquarius. You just add Venus in any hard aspect to Uranus, right? And as I'm doing this, I'm gonna stand up and grab a piece of paper. The reason for this is very simple, right? It's because the idea of Uranus when it's connected to Venus is to escape, is to have freedom. It's kind of the antithesis to to love and relationships and the idea that one should I guess there's some people who have the heavy Uranian energy who are very bad with commitment. It doesn't mean that they're cheaters, right? Uranus ruled by Aquarius is fixed, right? Fixed can be very once they dedicate themselves to something, a lot of fixed Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, they can be very, very, very loyal, and they can stick to something over time. That's what fixed energy is. But I think that one of the big reasons is that when relationships start to kind of go a certain way, a lot of people who have, the Aquarius, I have Aquarius, Venus, and Mars, right? So it could be that kind of thing, just Aquarius planets, or the Venus Uranus is that temptation to run away, that temptation when things get a little bit repetitive to rebel or to feel like I'm losing myself. I want to go out and it's about individuation, right? That's what Uranus is about. So the whole idea of relationships where it's like two souls coming together, that's very against that. So I wrote, okay, so it makes someone fascinated by excitement, but allergic to stability. They crave love, but as soon as things feel predictable, they start looking for the exit. One moment they're infatuated and making big claims. The next they need space and freedom, leaving their partner confused about where they stand. Then with Venus in Aquarius, or Venus in Aquarius loves the idea of connection, but doesn't always want to feel tied down. They're drawn to relationships that feel different, rebellious, or unconventional in some way. Emotional detachment is common even when they care deeply. Partners may feel like they're dating someone who's both present and distant at the same time. It's not easy. They need a ton of space and intellectual stimulation, and their type is never the normal type. So I guess like what I would say about that is, it's that whole predictability thing. And the fact that the Uranian archetype in love can be a little bit detached, can feel, it doesn't like consistent, it doesn't like the whole good morning texts and the same thing over and over, right? So that can be a little bit tough. And it's also, Uranus is about sudden surprises. So a lot of times these types of relationships start out of nowhere and start very, very fast and intense. So if you're dating someone who's a Uranian type, or has any of these influences, it's better to not put pressure on them. It's better to kind of just stand back and understand that they're sort of an alien in a way, in the sense that Uranians feel time. Their relationship to time is very different than other humans, right? And a lot of times what happens with Uranus is they trigger insecurities in other people, right? So let's say like they don't answer you for a while and you thought everything was going well, blah, blah, blah. Well, whatever, and then you have all of this, PTSD and all of this, I guess you could say, trauma come to your head of what it could be. You're projecting, and then you find out that they had some like actual family crisis, or that they were so sick that they were like, that they were in bed every single minute of the day, like, it's stuff like that. And then you're like, okay, well, does that invalidate what I went through during those days? No, it's still, so, okay. Low vibe, water type. I wrote men, but I'm gonna take away the men part because I've seen that with women too. Low vibe, water sign. Okay, so basically, this one is pretty obvious, right? Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces. When they are at their lowest manifestation, meaning that they are the version of those signs that are people who have those energies in their chart, and who haven't manifested them to the high levels of manifestation, they can be very, very manipulative, right? They are always very emotionally intelligent, nearly always, intuitive, and they can use, and sometimes they have this ability to appeal to the emotions, right? Know what to say to garner sympathy, and by understanding the emotional undercurrent, they can manipulate it by playing victim, by doing all types of psychological warfare that really comes from trying to control. Also, if it's Cancer, they can be big crybabies and play victim a lot. They can just have this like really cold, vindictive way of being that usually gets credited as Scorpio. With Scorpio can definitely be like that. But Cancer, low vibe Cancer will be passive aggressive. Like they won't, the difference between the two is that and this is low vibe. I have a lot of Cancer friends and family. They won't say the thing, but then they'll go and do something horrible. I've seen it so many times where like instead of like communicating the problem, they don't do that. And then they go out and have an action that's just like absolutely horrible that could have been avoided. So I wrote, okay, so when these people operate at a low level, relationships become an emotional minefield. They typically have not worked on themselves on an emotional level, so are very repressed in this way, leading to unconscious frustration. They can manipulate through guilt, withhold affection, or drown their partner in their unresolved baggage. Yep. Cancer can cling, Scorpio can control. I'd say Cancer, yeah, true. And Pisces can disappear into a world of escapism. Yeah, exactly. So Pisces, as you know, can disappear. Yeah, they can be very unreliable. They can, like, I know a lot of women who have told me that they've had a lot of trouble with Pisces men because Pisces men have ghosted them, right? And they thought they had something good, and then out of nowhere, the Pisces man just disappears, and you don't hear from them again. I've heard that about Aquarius also. That's not water. So the deeper the emotions, the harder they are to understand. I have heard some crazy stories, especially around Pisces men. I just said that, and I am a Pisces man, so we're not all that bad. Okay. Next is Mars and Gemini. Mainly this one, I would say, is because you could add Venus and Gemini. Let's do that. Let's do that. Mars plus Venus and Gemini. I'd say this one because Gemini is really, and just a lot of Gemini. Let's just do like a lot plus a lot of Gemini. Gemini is about experimentation. It's about curiosity. So obviously a low vibe of Venus and Gemini is, they have the whole stereotype of being the horror of the zodiac, right? And I know a lot of Venus and Geminis who aren't like that, but if you actually think about it, Venus, is real, can say a lot about how we are in love, what we're attracted to, sort of our, what we value, but also how we move in that realm of life. So, if it's a Gemini Venus, they might be curious about lots of, it's about experimentation. It's about trying this, trying that. So if you apply that to people, not, obviously you can imagine how it could turn out. It could be this person, this person, this person. But a lot of times Venus Geminis, they're very, very attracted to the mind. It's like sapiosexual energy, right? So sometimes a Venus and Gemini it will seem to the other person like that the Venus and Gemini is coming on to them, but they're not really, right? They're really just interested in something about them. But obviously, someone with a lot of Gemini energy can have a lot of commitment issues and will find it hard to be satisfied with just one thing because they have so much they want to experience. I wrote, Mars in Gemini loves variety and mental stimulation, which can make relationships feel like an endless game. They get bored faster than most and need constant entertainment to stay engaged. Their words are sharp and they know exactly how to play with emotions, whether intentionally or not. Just when you think they're serious, they can disappear into a whirlwind of new distractions. They need someone that keeps them interested because Gemini is a curious explorer. Exactly. So it's the same with all, Gemini moon, sun, whatever, just at the lowest vibration. That part about like constant stimulation, like that need, like they need a partner that is really like a variety, that has a variety of different attributes, right? And that there's a very strong mental connection, or else things can get very boring for them. So that's just, sort of a potential. So then I had Uranus in the 7th house. I feel like that kind of falls what I had before. I guess I'll talk about it briefly, even though I already had a whole section on Uranus. So basically, Uranus in the 7th house can be a lot of sudden breakups, like really fast relationships that come together really fast and that form really fast, and and they can end very fast. One second, I'm just saying this text to my mom. They could end very fast too. So I wrote, Uranus here makes relationships unpredictable, filled with sudden breakups / changes in directions. They attract partners who are exciting but inconsistent, and they often struggle with their own ability to settle down. Freedom is their priority, even when they're in love. The problem is they don't always realize how disruptive their need for space can be. They need relationships where they can continue their individuation process and not feel like they're losing their sense of self. Yeah, so same thing, with the Aquarius stuff. I need, there's a need for a different type of relationship, for a, non-traditional, something that doesn't follow all the rules, and relationships like that can be like a roller coaster, and settling down can be very, very difficult, right? So it's really, with most of these placements, it's just, about finding the right person. It's just, I feel like for some people, there's a larger pool of people that will work for them. And for it's not just these placements, it's a lot of different places in general, definitely myself included, right? That it's just like a smaller pool of people that would actually work with them. Next, I have Venus opposite Saturn. So Venus opposite Saturn is more of a tough one for the person who has it psychologically. But, typically, let's see what I wrote. This placement creates a fear of rejection or being deemed as unworthy in relationships. They want, and I would say too, like, it creates a lot of karmic lessons in love, especially the first 30 years for people who had this. So they can have a lot of trouble expressing themselves, a lot of trouble showing warmth, a lot of trouble loving themselves. That's really where it all starts. That's where Venus is, about self-love. So they want love, but feel like it's always slipping through their fingers. Their early experiences with affection and vulnerability may have been cold or conditional, with some pain making them guarded. Yeah, so when you see Saturn like that with Venus, you can imagine that the person growing up, it's not that they weren't loved necessarily, it's just that a lot of times there's with Saturn hard aspects, there's a level of like coldness. I always think of like the military father, right? And strictness, right? So even in healthy relationships, they often feel undeserving of love, making it difficult to fully embrace intimacy. Okay, so you're maybe asking, okay, why is this a red flag? This just seems like someone that's wounded. I don't know the answer to that. I guess this is just one that you see that in a chart. It doesn't mean this person is going to cheat on you, but it might mean that, let's say you meet this person, you guys are dating, obviously depending on their age, because Venus opposite Saturn, when someone works on themselves so they mature, it actually, Venus and Saturn is very good for marriage, regardless of the aspect, right? It's Venus Saturn marriage, long-term commitment, right? So it's very good for that. But if someone hasn't worked through their own self-love, that's a good indication that there's going to be a lot of trouble. And then what happens when someone doesn't love themselves? Well, they will project that onto you, right? It's just like that whole, which the one I just decided I'm going to talk about this next. Lots of Virgo. So, okay, so, let's call it like Virgo in love. No, fuck it. Lots of Virgo is fine. Okay, so lots of Virgo. So this one is very. I read this one down in my article, but basically, okay. So we're talking about Venus and Virgo. There's a there's a perfectionism about, okay, this is the type of person that I want to be with, right? They have to look like this. They have to be like this, and it comes from the self. The Virgo energy is so perfectionist and so critical of the self that it notices very small things that no one else notices that are imperfect about the self. So when it's unhealed, low vibe, it will project that onto the next person. It's the kind of thing where it's like they think that their shit doesn't stink, and then they could have like a dirty room, and then they go, or a dirty apartment, and then they go over to their friend's house and they start pointing out all like the small little imperfections about it. So that's like Mars and Virgo especially, right? They can be like that, where they are just pointing out all of, not all the time, right? But they can just be like kind of flow killers in a low vibe, where they're just like, you're trying to just flow, you're trying to just like kind of go through life and not sweat the small stuff. You don't have to make everything you observe, you don't have to say it, right? So sometimes that Virgo energy, it can also have a lot of anxiety, right? It can overthink things way too much when it comes to love, regardless of its Venus, Mars, Moon especially, right? Even Sun. So because that sign is all about analyzing, love is not supposed to, this is like the Virgo Pisces axis, right? Where on one side you have Virgo, which is about analysis, and then you have Neptune, Pisces, which is about just flowing and just letting things go and surrendering and dreaminess, right? So obviously, what's better for Venus, Pisces, exalted, or Virgo, detriment, right? So it's like, this is a good indicator of why, because love is supposed to be a free flowing, almost intuitive in a sense, right? It's when you're just over analyzing things and criticizing and having such high standards that are almost, it's almost like a defense mechanism, because it's almost like these are impossible standards to get to. So unconsciously they know that if they set standards that are so high, they'll never have to deal with some type of vulnerability or something of the sort. So what else about Virgo? Did I write anything about Virgo? I did not. Maybe on part 2. But yeah, so all in all, in love, for Virgo to work well, it has to lean into the opposite sign, Pisces, and really learn radical self-acceptance. And it can be an amazing partner. Virgo placements can obviously be incredible, and they're so giving, and they really are loyal. They really are amazing. It's just that they in every realm of life, they are their own worst enemy. So when they can start loving themselves and start accepting themselves and knowing that it's impossible to get to 100, and that if you don't get to 100, you don't have to fall to 0. Be more balanced in that way, then everything can unlock. Okay. Do I want to do this one? Okay, I guess 12th house, Stellium. I probably won't say much about some of these. So this one I wrote, they are deeply intuitive, but their emotions are buried so deep even they don't fully understand them. Relationships often involve secrets or hidden feelings / overall confusion. They may have a habit of attracting emotionally unavailable people without realizing it. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I really want to have this one on there. I mean, a 12th house stellium. I guess the big thing I would think of is like, okay, well, if you're dating someone that has a lot of 12th house and they haven't done the inner work, and they could have a lot of fears, that they're not accessing or that they haven't looked into, and there can be a lot of elements of their own psyche that are very hidden. And I think that you'd probably want to be with someone who, has overcome a lot of the really dark stuff in their psyche, or who at least has tried to. And sometimes they can really lack life direction and lack that sense of self, of understanding who they are. And yeah, I wrote relationships often involve secrets or hidden feelings. So a lot of times, like 12th house relationships can be with someone who's already in a relationship, or it can be just this a very, like, secret relationships are very you have no idea the amount of 12th house people I've met who have told me about, like, this relationship they have that's top secret that no one else besides me knows about, right? So it's very interesting. And then the part, they have a habit of attracting emotionally unavailable people without realizing it. Yeah, so it's not like I have nothing against the 12th house. I think that it's just people who have a lot of planets there, they need to be working on themselves spiritually. If they are, they can be superpowers and very big, good mystics. Okay, I wrote Saturn in the 7th house. Don't want to go into this. Okay, let's just do like let's just do Venus, Capricorn / Saturn 7th or 5th. How about that? I'll just make up a new category. So yeah, basically with this one, I wrote Saturn 7th house. With Saturn sitting here in the house of relationships, commitment doesn't come easily. They tend to take love seriously, sometimes too seriously, making romance feel more like an obligation than a source of joy. So first of all, Saturn the 7th or the 5th, the first 30 years, there's a big challenge. 5th house is about like the early courting stage, like the flirting stage, the dating stage, whatever you want to call it. So it can make people take that too seriously, or lack that kind of fun element, that lightness. But Saturn the 7th house, obviously a lot of people with that have a karma to not have their best relationships until after the Saturn return. So it can take some of the joy and cause a lot of restrictions in that area of life. So if you see someone with that, it's not necessarily run away, because they could be very, very loyal partners. They're here to master relationships, right? And Venus and Capricorn, they are, but they're just going to have a more serious. So this one isn't really red flag. It's just that they have more of a serious. So if that's your style, right? If you're, I don't know, if you have a lot of earth energy, or if you are, Cancer, have Cancer energy, whatever you have, like in your chart, that you'd be more interested in someone who wants to build something, right? Then there's different strokes for different folks, right? So they learn many important and tough karmic lessons through relationships. Yep. So even Venus and Capricorn, the same thing. They tend to go for they prefer partners who are older, or who are more mature, people who they really, really care about security. So it's not bad. I don't know. This one maybe shouldn't be in there. I think it's just like it just once again depends on context and who we're dealing with. And these often start with difficulties. These relationships often start with difficulties / delays, or partners who are significantly older or emotionally unavailable. If someone tries to rush them, they'll put up walls so high that even the most patient partner can feel shut out. Yeah. So the point here that I'm making with like Venus and Capricorn, Saturn, these positions, and this goes back to the Venus opposite Saturn, right? It's like there's a level of self-love that is represented by Venus that is restricted by Saturn, but it's not necessarily bad, so I don't want to talk too much about that one. Okay, next is Venus in Pisces, the perfectly exalted Venus in Pisces. I have some new information about this one too. So everyone looks at Venus in Pisces as this amazing placement. Oh my God, it's universal love, unconditional love, and it's very beautiful in a lot of ways. But one of the issues of Venus and Pisces is that because their love extends to so many people, it extends to everyone, right? Not in that type of like way, promiscuous way. I'm saying that they have this love, this boundless love. Is that sometimes it's very, very hard for them to focus that love on just one person, and I do not mean that in a promiscuous way. I mean that. Let me hold on. Stay with me. There's literally a book that I was reading about this that had this exact line. Let me say something to you guys real quick. This table, I broke it. I'm so sad. I have to fix it somehow. I have no earth in my chart, so I'm screwed. I just like leaned onto it, and it's a wooden table, and it kind of fell over a bit. So this is not straight. Okay. Whatever. We'll just deal with this for now. So okay. So I wrote. Okay. No, they wrote. The feelings are too general and all-encompassing to be channeled easily. Okay. So rather, the problem is that the love the person feels is unfocused and diffuse. Neptune. The feelings are too general and all-encompassing to be channeled easily to just one person. The same general attunement, they're talking about Venus Neptune here, right? The same general attunement is found in those who have Venus and Pisces. As a friend of mine once described this type of person, quotes, yes, they're loving, but how can you know what you mean, that you mean anything special to them, since they are that way with everybody? Thus, it seems that Venus-Neptune combinations are most at home when the affections can be dispensed to many persons rather than limited to just one individual. Okay, so that's just an interesting take on it. Now, I have seen in my life Venus and Pisces be very problematic. I've been very open about my best friend since I was 4 years old, who had like a perfect chart, a really, really good chart, Aries Sun, Aquarius Moon, literally being like the most charismatic, intelligent, everything you could imagine about this guy. He's a brother to me, right? Like he had everything. And he was brainwashed by a woman. He has Venus and Pisces. He also has Venus square Neptune. So there you go. And actually, let's call this one Venus and Pisces plus Venus Neptune. So basically, like with both of these, with Venus and Pisces first, actually we'll do them in different sections. With Venus and Pisces, the problem is that yes, it's very beautiful. Yes, it's the exalted Venus, and yes, a lot of astrologers will say, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful," blah blah blah. And it is beautiful. Like it's very romantic. They can be some of the best partners that see the magic. They feel the magic of God. You know, they are the artists. They are, they're incredible. You know, their love goes beyond lifetimes, all that stuff, whatever. The point is that boundaries is not good. So if you're in a committed relationship with someone and they have Venus and Pisces, like what that just said, you never know, because they're looking for that soul type of love, and it's just really tough. You know, you could say the same thing about Venus and Libra. Venus is in dignity in Libra, so it's not like that, you know. But because those are the two signs that lack boundaries the most. But what I've seen with Venus in Pisces, to my friend, he got brainwashed and joined a cult basically, and deleted all his family, he just like stopped talking and blocked every single person from his old life. It was crazy, right? So I've seen that, and that's not the only time I've seen where someone with Venus and Pisces has the ability to be brainwashed, and because it's that whole Neptunian bringing in these kind of like energy vampire types of people, not having your boundaries up, believing the spiritual jibby jabber, whatever, talk, and falling victim to it, right? So here I wrote, they fall for potential, not reality. They can be in love with the concept of love itself. Their romanticized view of love makes them ignore red flags, believing love will fix everything. Yeah, so I've seen Venus and Pisces with someone else who kept going back to her ex, right? Even this guy was like a piece of shit, like a toxic, like loser, lowlife, and she had the chance of him and this really, really amazing, great guy, who actually loves her and all this stuff, right? And it took her years before she finally realized, that it wasn't gonna work. And this guy was a loser, like not loser, and like, I mean, he let's just say he had underground connections. Let's put it like in that way, dangerous connections. But this guy's a lowlife. There's no future there. And even beyond that, her words were, it's my Venus in Pisces. Like, when I start loving someone, I can't stop loving them. And it doesn't mean that, you know, she needs to like sleep with them or feels that, but it's very hard for her to just stop loving someone that she starts loving, which is very admirable, right? But then it's like, okay, like I'm like that too, you know, in a lot of ways, with people who really deserve it, right? And I'll go out of my way to help those people, but I have boundaries. So that's a problem. So, yeah, so they often attract unavailable or broken partners because they think love should be a sacrifice. That's so true. And let me look for, hold on, guys. I just want to see if I'm going to have, if I even wrote about Neptune or if I have to freestyle that one. Okay, whatever. So Neptune, I'll just talk briefly about Neptune Venus, right? Slash Neptune 7th, 5th. So, okay, basically with this ones, I've talked about these a lot. Basically with these ones, you have to be very careful because there's this kind of idealism where in love, Neptune is the ideal. And it's very similar to Venus and Pisces in the sense that the person sees the potential and not the reality of what the person is, right? So if you meet someone with this, they might idealize you a lot at the start. Oh my God, you're my savior, this and that. But then their boundaries might be really, really bad in love. So you might be dating them, and then some energy vampire person might come their way, and depending on where they're at, they might just have such low boundaries that they might let that person in. And, you know, I'm not saying cheat on you, but it just creates a lot of this feeling of like when you first, especially Neptune in the 5th or 7th, when you first meet someone, oh my God, that's my soulmate, blah, blah, blah. And you almost, there's really this period of, I don't know how long it is, where you have to be with them in person, you know, with the other person in person for that shadow of Neptune, that cloud of Neptune to go away until you literally see them as a person. I was just talking to my student and we were going through, we were talking about one of her friends, someone she knew who had this energy in his chart in some way. And we kind of got to the conclusion that like he would throw and he had a massive 7th house, that he would just throw himself completely into all these relationships, right? And basically like he would be here, he would see these women as here, right? They are, you know, they're you know, Neptune is heaven, you know, it's like this is the divine. So he sees them as the divine. And then over time, he sees them as who they really are, which isn't bad, but then after that, he's not putting them above him. Then he would get, I think he had Uranus on the 7th house too. So then after that, that's when he would need the space. That's when he would need the you know, to have his own space and keep his individuation. So he would like merge completely, see that person as like better than a human, and then get not mad, but get frustrated. This person's daily routine is getting in the way because they're like a Capricorn or Virgo moon or something, is getting in the way of mine, you know, or it's not in tune with mine. But you see how that works. It's like right when they came down to his level, it took time, and it really is like one day, because I have Neptune in the 5th house, so I have experience with this. It really does. But when you have awareness of this, that changes everything. With all these, awareness is everything. But the red flag is, yeah, that if you're dating someone with one of these placements, that you have to really take everything they say at the start of when you're dating with a grain of salt, because they might not even be lying. And I'm not saying that these people that there can't be truth to this, right? Like they're not bullshitting, right? It's just that this is just how it works, you know? Okay, so where was I? So Venus, Pluto, mainly square opposite. I'll just write. So obviously this one creates very, very intense relationships. I'm very aware of Venus square Pluto. I have it, and I know a million people with it. So basically, until there's maturity with people who have these Venus Pluto aspects, is that they will meet their own shadow in love, right? So a lot of times they date very toxic people until a certain evolutionary level is reached, and you can see the correlation of their spiritual, energetic growth as people with who they're dating, who they're choosing to date. So why is this a potential red flag? Well, if this is the low vibe of this, there could be manipulation, there could be gaslighting, there could be just someone who has a massive fear of abandonment that projects that into the relationship and can be very clingy and just have such an intense fear that you're going to leave them that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's pretty much it, right? Just so much darkness can come into the relationship, and that person can have a lot of self-hatred, right? Venus Pluto can be self-hatred, so they have a lot of work to do. But like I said, someone who has worked through their stuff with this can be a very passionate lover. If you put Venus and Pluto together, they're always going to be very intense, but they can be very romantic. Sexually, they can be very, very good, even though that'd be more Mars Pluto, but still like very, very passionate, very loyal, and someone who, yeah, real ride or die, right? So I wrote this can create love that feels like obsession, where there can be a deep fear of abandonment that leads to blah, 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 that leads to manipulation tactics. Power struggles are very common. Love isn't just a connection, but it's a battlefield where control, passion, and transformation come together. They attract relationships that feel fated and irresistible, but also impossible to leave even when they turn toxic. So that's another thing. Like Venus Pluto, like they can be in trauma relation. What's it called? Trauma bonds, right? Where they also just feel like, because there's the two people in the relationship have gone through so much crazy shit together, that there's a sort of loyalty that I can't leave this person. I've been through this, and this with that person. Breakups rarely happen cleanly, and even when love ends, it lingers like an emotional ghost, pulling them back into a karmic loop. Yeah. Okay, so next I'll add one to this. Venus retrograde plus Venus square nodes. So basically, I'm not going to go too far into these. You should get a reading to really like understand this for your own chart, jessenisinastrology.com. But I'd say a lot of times Venus retrograde, and you know, the thing I see between these two is that love, there's something karmic in this lifetime around self-love and around relationships that is being replayed from past lives, where that was, you know, either there's too much of an emphasis on that usually, or there's just a pattern a pattern of relating to self and to other that was just not working for their evolutionary goals, and that was keeping them held back, right? So let's say it's someone Venus square the nodes who has a past life tendency of always, you know, relying on the relationship to define them, right? Something like that. And because of that, it pushed them away from their own individual growth. And then, you know, Venus retrograde could be someone who bases their happiness, and I've said this so many times, you know, until they reach a certain evolutionary goal, and then it can be something very, very good, because retrograde planets always, you know, there's a Saturnian element to them where they tend to get better over time, right? It's actually like a perfection process that is harder at the start because you're creating a different type of foundation. But anyways, yeah, there can be a level of codependency there too, where they're just thinking a lot about love, and their happiness is based on how much or how little love that they're getting. So, and yeah, with Venus square nodes, like love feels like a karmic loop. Lots of fated encounters, unresolved lessons, and it's just like attracting very karmic relationships that it's like, are you going to repeat the same? You know, are you going to stay in the same loop? Are you going to repeat the same pattern as you have been for different lifetimes? So past life wounds, whether through being betrayed or lacking self-love for themselves that played out in relationships, it's time to break the cycle in this life. Okay, let me look at the other ones to see if I want to go into these. Okay, moon opposite Venus. Should I do opposite Earth square? No, the opposite Venus. So Moon Venus a lot of times is related. There's a lot of times like in a man's chart there can be issues with the mother, like a mother wound at times I've noticed, and different people have talked about it. But let's see. I wrote, this creates tension between emotional needs, the Moon, and romantic desires, Venus. It tends to make relationships feel like a constant contradiction. They crave love, but once they get it, they start questioning whether it's really what they wanted. At times, they're affectionate and devoted, while at others, they pull away for no clear reason. Their love life tends to involve frustrating near misses, love triangles, etc. Okay. This is one I have less experience with, but what I can say is that um, here you're battling with, what you want, what you need to be happy and feel at peace at home within yourself, and what you're attracted to and what you want in love and what you value. So you could see how it's not really like you can just choose one. It's one of those instances like where, let me think of an example. Um, what's a good signs? I don't know, like Moon and Taurus, Venus and Scorpio, right? They'd be opposite, wouldn't they? So, on a lunar level, you want things to be kind of calm, present, less, not really having that drama, and then um, consistency, etc. Whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole Taurus Moon thing. And then Venus and Scorpio is about death, rebirth, transformation. It's about fully immersing yourself into the partner and going and taking lots of risks. And you see, so it's just the opposition, the axis of Taurus and Scorpio that I talked about in the last video that's playing out, but in the context of like your emotional needs and your in love, right? So there definitely be some going back and forth of like, okay, well, by me, the Venus and Scorpio, which can, sometimes involve crises in love. It can involve a need to evolve, to let a part of yourself die in that area of life and to kind of evolve into something new. That could clash with Taurus, which, doesn't always want to take those big risks, right? Even though sometimes, there is a lot of misconceptions around Taurus, but I'll talk about that in another video. Okay. So this one, I don't know. I wrote Sagg, Gemini, and Aquarius moons. This is, okay, I'm a Sagg moon, so screw this, even though I wrote it. Look, this is a red flag video. It's more for laughs. So, obviously, the only reason I wrote these ones is because these moon signs are all about emotional freedom. Sag moon and Gemini moon opposites, they both are, they need to experience. But like the point is, if you're someone who has a lot in common, like if you have a Sag, if your chart is also very much about that, there's nothing wrong here. There's no moon sign they should run away from. This is more of a joke. Emotional freedom is their top priority, making them restless in relationships that feel too heavy or unpredictable. Yeah. They process emotions through logic or humor. So yeah, definitely Sag processes through humor, or philosophy, and Aquarius is definitely through logic and space. And Gemini is, I would say, more through logic, intellect, and they process their emotions through speaking about them. And they can be avoidant at times. They need space. They often struggle with deep emotional intimacy. Sag moons escape, Gemini moons detach, and Aquarius moons intellectualize. I would say it was probably the other way around. Gemini moons intellectualize, Aquarius moons detach. But whatever. That one, don't take too much in that. Okay, so let's see. So, okay, I'll leave it there. I have a part 2, but I have to go hang out with my mom, and this is already enough for you. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you guys want me to do the part 2, and I can. Let me just screenshot this. Or how many did I talk about in here? Oh, I already talked about it. This one, that one, damn. Okay, whatever. We'll figure it out. Yeah. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys have any experience with these, dating anyone who has these placements, etc. Or if you have any yourself. I know for me, I have Venus square Pluto, and it used to be horrible. And even to this day, I think that like it still does. I don't. It's like I still can feel some of that energy, the shadow coming out in relationships, but I just don't act on it. Just in certain times, right? Nothing bad. It never was bad, but it's not an easy one to have, and every Venus square Pluto has had that. Obviously, I've had the experience with two people very close to me, Venus and Pisces, more than two people actually, and I have a Sagg moon. Let's see. I know I've really experienced the Venus retrograde and Venus square nodes with a lot of people, and yeah, the Neptune Venus and Neptune 7th, 5th house. That's something I've seen a million times, and people just need to kind of like learn realism and to get grounded and to kind of take their time and have the awareness. Venus, Capricorn, that whole Saturn Venus thing, I've seen that a lot. The 12th house thing, less when I've seen it a lot, but less in the context of relationships, but still a good amount. Obviously, the Virgo, a ton. Venus, Saturn aspects, yep, of course. And then the Uranus 7th house, which goes with like the whole Uranus Venus / Aquarius thing. And then, of course, the low vibe water. So I've seen them all. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy this Cosmos session. Please subscribe, leave a comment, whatever. And I'll talk to y'all later. Ciao.